You mentioned Piers Morgan, the show, the appearance you made a few different times here. Explain to the audience, for those who might not know, what happened there, what you expected to happen there, and how afraid you were of being in the middle of all of that.
So I've been on a Piers Morgan show a couple of times, one to promote my show in Europe last March, and one when they asked me to talk about the Afrocentric movement with the new Cleopatra Netflix documentary, and I talked about, as an Egyptian, about that. So when the thing broke out in Palestine, they called me to talk about what happened, and I was afraid because the propaganda on the 7th of October was crazy, and the stuff that was said to happen, and which actually turned out to be wrong, and a big part of it is propaganda. It was very difficult for me to speak up about what's happening without appearing as I am supporting Hamas or supporting terrorism or like being anti-Semite. So I kind of like I said no a couple of times. But then I saw that Ben Shapiro came on his show and he said the most vile, most horrible things, and I got like very angry, and they told me to come on the show. So I went on the show, and my first interview with him went viral. 23 million views on the first show. That was the biggest that he did in his YouTube channel. And then he asked me to come and to do like a sit down with him. And all I did was that I talked differently about what's happening there. Try to humanize Palestinian, because they're always looked upon as like lesser humans who should die. And right now there's like almost 30,000 people who got killed in less than 100 days, and the whole world is doing nothing for it. And all of they're using Hamas, they're using terrorism. Even if ISIS lived in Gaza, there's no excuse of killing 30,000 people in 100 days. And there's no excuse of like dropping what is equivalent to 4 nuclear bombs into like a very congested, locked up open prison with 2.5 million people living there, and the dehumanization of a group of people like that, which is this is like the even Holocaust survivors talk against what's happening in Palestine. So you cannot make this as an anti-Semite thing. There's like the Jewish Voice for Peace who have been arrested in New York and saying that this should not happen in my name. You cannot just like label anybody who talks for the freedom of Palestinian people as anti-Semite. This is propaganda. This is a way to shut down conversation. Every time you talk about Islam, you're an Islamophobe. That's wrong. Every time you talk about like what's happening with the LGBTQ as a transphobe, that's not right. You cannot use labels, or when you talk about what's wrong with America and people tell you that you're unpatriotic. Because I've been there. When I talk about what's happening in Egypt and people told me like you're a spy, you're a traitor. When I talk about against the Islamists, they told me like you're an infidel, you hate Islam. So I've been like with this kind of life. I've been called names by the Islamists. I've been called names by the nationalists. I've been called names by the pro-Israeli people. I've been even called names by the pro-Palestinian, but not being doing enough. So every time that you talk, and people kind of like throw stuff at you as racist, Islamophobe, you're an anti-Semite, this is a way to shut down conversation. And this is like a very, very lazy way to intimidate people about not talking about issues by just like throwing labels at you instead of actually listening to a nuanced, deep, comprehensive, objective conversation.